Hello and welcome to Shape Your World 2017. Today we're going to be looking at SOLIDWORKS Composer and how we can use it to create rich technical documentation. So let's get started. First we'll get you started with some of the user interface options so you can get acclimated to using the tool. You notice we have a ribbon on the top portion of our screen, and we can cycle through many of the tabs like Render, Author, Style, Transform, Geometry, Workshops, and lastly Animate. If you need to make changes to your window option like turning on or off the timeline, that can be achieved by checking on various boxes. Here in the Render tab, we have a lot of really great tools to change how our CAD document looks. Now, a great thing about Composer is that it reads in your SOLIDWORKS CAD document and many other CAD files so that we can use them to create these graphical images to portray a thought or a process, or maybe even training downstream to our customers, or even internal training for repair manuals or repair field technicians. In SOLIDWORKS Composer, we label a few things actors and collaborators. Actors are the things on the screen, like parts or assemblies, that we can physically grab and move in a direction. Scale, rotate, maybe even hide or show. Think of us as being the director, and we're telling the actors and collaborators where to be and how to act. So for this first view, we're going to leverage our selection sets to grab these center screws and show how this top disc is being removed. Selection sets can be easily created. Selection sets can be easily created by control-clicking several components and marking Create Selection Set. Here we're going to go ahead and hide the disc and select the screws that we want to show the removal for. Control-click each one of the screws and click Add to Selection. While we're also here, we're going to take advantage of selecting a couple more selection sets so we can use them here again in the future. We'll just box these items here, and its counterpart on the opposite side, and these two little tabs. Again, click Selection Set, and we can see that we can reuse these in the future whenever we want. So let's go back to our main view, grab our first selection set that we created, and choose to translate them by right-clicking and selecting the Translate tool, or selecting the Transform option, or Transform tab rather, and selecting Transform. We can grab them, move them up in space, maybe zoom a little bit so we can see that a little easier, and our parts are being moved upward. Now to kind of symbolize this move in the vertical direction, we'll go ahead and add a collaborator, an arrow. By mousing over the center geometry and holding the Alt key down, I'm able to pick up the axis that all those parts are lined up with and place my arrow on that axis so that even if we rotate the model, it's kind of attached to that same orientation, that same 3D space as the screws came from. Now we'll notice that the arrow's actually facing the wrong direction. That's okay, we can change anything like that in SOLIDWORKS Composer. Simply click the arrow and then browse to Arrow Shape and Extremity. Here, instead of clicking Start, click End or Both. End will reverse the direction. Both will show both directions. Here, let's just try End. And let's also enable or disable Stay on Top. This will make the arrow appear as if it's passing through the model. A little bit of cleanup, maybe reorganizing our view. We're ready to save this view so that we can create some technical documentation. Once you got the view just right, click the snapshot icon in the left-hand corner, Create a View, or Control E. Our first view is created. For this next view, we'll go ahead and leverage our selection sets again. And maybe we'll go ahead and hide the hardware that we don't need anymore because they've already been removed. Now let's go to our Assembly tab, select our second set of selection sets, and Control-click the wheel so we can move them all together. Then we'll click and drag and move this up. But what I've noticed is that I've made a small mistake. I'll capture this view just to save my changes thus far, but I actually didn't want to move these little two tabs in this one operation. So by selecting both the tabs, I can browse to my Transform menu and select Restore to Neutral Position. This will bring the tabs back in place so I can specify another step on how to remove those. Here we'll go ahead and clean up my view, get it just right, and update our current view. For the next view, we'll go ahead and hide the things we don't need. And by double-clicking on our left mouse button, Composer will auto-fit the part to the screen. Here we want to add some attention to detail because we really want to see these locations on our model. So we'll go ahead and zoom in and capture the view. Next, we'll grab both these little tabs, translate and move them up. And this time, in addition to that, let's go ahead and add in our explode lines. Simply mouse to your Author tab, locate Paths, and under Path select Create Associative Path from Neutral Position. We can select both of these paths and change their properties, maybe like opacity, the type of line, and the thickness of these lines. Lastly, with Stay on Top disabled, the lines won't lie over the components but appear as if they're coming out of them. Great, with this view finished, let's go ahead and capture the view. And we're now very quickly adding several views to our view palette on the left-hand side that we can use for publications and documentation. For this next view, we need to show how we can get this belt off of the two drive pulleys. Now this will require some vertical movement, pulling up on the belt, and also maybe rotating one of those pulleys at the same time. In SOLIDWORKS Composer, we can select all the components that we want to rotate, mouse to our Transform tab, select Rotate, or right-click and hit the Rotate option. Here we can easily move these, and even grab an arrow to show its movement. With the arrow selected, let's go ahead and select Flat. Maybe change the radius just a little bit. It's a little large right now. And lastly, change where the end of the arrow starts and stops. We also may want to add attention to this belt. We can change it to a noticeable color, say like magenta, so that it kind of grabs people's attention. Next, let's move that belt upward. And again, add some arrows to show that movement. By holding down the Alt key, we can pick up the center and pull our arrow in. We'll go ahead and select all our arrows now and disable the Stay on Top function. Great, this view looks good. Let's go ahead and save this. One thing really fantastic about SOLIDWORKS Composer is it's really easy to navigate your model. If you click on your Assembly tab, you'll notice that this assembly very closely or directly matches your SOLIDWORKS assembly tree. You can break open each one of these subassemblies, select individual components to maybe hide or show, and create our own custom views. In our Collaboration tab, You can also see all the stuff that we've created thus far. By clicking under Markups, we can see all the arrows that we've generated so far. Turning these off simply by unchecking each one of them. Now to continue the instructions on removing this belt, we may need to specify what tools may be required in order to achieve this. I'll go ahead and pan out just a little bit here so that I make a little bit more room for some notes. And here, under our Workshops tab, we can select the Image Library. Here, you can use some of the default images that SOLIDWORKS Composer gives you, and you can also add your own. Here, let's go ahead and specify that we may need to use screwdrivers to pry the belt off, and that safety glasses are required for this operation. We may also want to add a note. So let's control-click all three of these components, browse to our Author tab, then select Label, and Label with multiple components. If you just wanted to label one thing at a time, control-clicking the three components isn't necessary. Here we'll go ahead and place our label at the bottom portion of the screen, and choose the Edit the Text. Here we'll specify that we may need to use screwdrivers to remove the belt. The note's been created, but it's a little bit small. So let's grab our font size and just increase it until it's about right with everything else on the screen. Great, now that we have everything we need to articulate in our view, let's go ahead and capture it. And we can begin with the next set of work instructions. In my Views tab, I really like this initial view we created, but it looks a little plain. Let's fix that. Select the view, and use Control-C, or right-click Copy, and then paste. Double-click that view to activate it, and under our render options, let's turn on per pixel rendering, shadows, and ambient occlusion. We'll center this in the screen by holding down both the left and right mouse button for a dynamic zoom. This makes it easy to get it just perfect. Let's go ahead and change a couple colors of these wheels. There, that looks much better. We'll update this view. And now we have a really great cover image of our Disco Inferno BattleBot. Another thing that's really nice about Composer, it makes it really easy to generate multiple types of views. For instance, this view is shaded and we can see all the colors, but sometimes that can be costly to print. If we duplicate this view, we can easily mitigate that by going to our Render tab and selecting our render mode. Flat technical actually looks pretty cool, but if we're going for that black and white, selecting silhouette can save you a ton of money on your work instructions. I'll capture this view as well. It may be necessary to further document this model with maybe a parts list or a bill of materials so that we can increase our communication with our customers or our field technicians. So let's select a couple components here that we wish to create a bill of materials. With those components selected, let's browse to our Workshops tab and select our bill of material icon. Here we'll say apply BOM IDs to selected components and generate BOM IDs. What you'll notice here is that the BOM IDs were generated on the parent components, and thus might not be the right name for these for these objects. So on our options under parent level, select level 1. Click Generate BOM IDs. And a very common mistake can be mitigated very easily. With the BOM IDs created, let's go ahead and give ourselves a little bit of room. And at the bottom here, select Show BOM Table. With these components also selected, go ahead and click Create Callouts. Now all we have to do is a little bit of cleanup. Select your BOM table, and let's turn on model highlighting. Change our placement from bottom to free, and let's change our text size while we're at it. With model highlighting on, we can see that as we mouse over each one of our BOM list or parts list icons, it highlights the respective components. Next, let's organize our callouts. Under our Author tab, we can select Magnet Line. We can draw a magnet line out in space, and we can grab this and snap our callouts to the line so that they're easier to see. We can also do this for the bottom. And very easily organize our callouts. I also notice that my callouts are rather small. Let's go ahead and box select those and increase the font size. There, that's a little easier to read. Now that we have this view just the way we want it, let's go ahead and capture the view. As you can see, in a short amount of time, we were able to generate some really awesome technical documentation straight from our CAD model. Now the best thing about this is that if SOLIDWORKS updates, we can take those changes from SOLIDWORKS and push them directly to Composer without having to recreate any of those views. This is done easy by going to File, Update, and browsing for the SOLIDWORKS document you wish to update on. Selecting Update, all those changes that have been made will be imported directly into Composer. Next, let's take a look at how we can publish some of this information. With all these great views, here on our View tab, we want to create images or JPEGs so that we can reuse that in our publishing documentation. Under our Workshops tab, we can select High Resolution Image, select the profile, which controls the resolution, or create your own resolution here by typing in your specific values. Making any changes necessary to the actual images themselves, say like removing the ground or using a white background to save on printing. And lastly, under the Multiple tab, you can specify to save all the views at one time with a particular file naming convention. In this case, the name of the file and the name of the view. After selecting Save, we can create an image folder and click Save, and each one of those views will be published to that folder. Here, let's take a look. There we can see each view, and we can leverage this information inside our technical publication document. For example, let's take a look at our finished PDF. Here I have a manual, my cover image, my steps and processes to remove the belt with all my updated pictures, and lastly, a bill of material or parts list callout for reference. To create this particular PDF, I was able to leverage the capabilities of Microsoft Publisher by simply linking photos to specific regions in my document. And because the photo is linked, I can update the photo anytime if it happens to change. So you can imagine if the SOLIDWORKS file updates and I republish all my views again, so long as the views are linked inside your publisher or your publishing documentation software, all those pictures you've added will update simultaneously, and you can push out the new document in no time at all. Lastly, let's take a look at how we can publish things inside of Composer. First off, if you go to File, under Publish, you can publish your views as PDF documents. Each one of those views is saved, and we can take a look at the results. The PDF's created, and we can click on each one of these views to navigate different images. Lastly, we can also publish to Composer Player. Composer Player is the free viewer for all SOLIDWORKS Composer documents. Anyone can download the free player, open up a SOLIDWORKS Composer document, and click through each one of the images. Lastly, we can publish to HTML through our Workshop's Technical Illustration option. Simply selecting the profile and clicking Preview, we can look at an SVG right inside of Internet Explorer or Google Chrome. This makes it easy to publish to your website. For the final step of this video, let's learn how to easily create an animation inside of SOLIDWORKS Composer. Here I'm going to activate my initial view. I'm going to toggle to my animation mode by clicking on this button. To start, I'll go ahead and grab this initial view and drag it and drop it into my timeline here as the starting point. Next, I'll go ahead and give myself about a second here, and we're going to grab our screws that we initially grabbed for our selection set 1. Composer makes animating objects extremely easy. Here with our animation library, we can select to move a group of components and what to do with those components. In this case, what we're going to do is unscrew. From 0 to 1 seconds, we'll go ahead and flash from 1 to 2 seconds. We'll go ahead and flash magenta. That'll repeat 3 times. And then from 0 to 2 seconds, let's go ahead and move it in the y-axis. Or rotate it in the y-axis rather. And from 0 to 4 seconds, we'll go ahead and move it. Translate it in the y-axis. A distance of 1,000 units. A distance of 100 units. You can see in our overview at the bottom the sequence of events that are going to occur. So as opposed to doing each one of these individually one at a time, our animation library can do this all for us at once. Click Create, and our unscrew library and our unscrew animation is completed. Let's go ahead and play this so we can see what it looks like. Now it's a little far away. Let's go ahead and fix that. Mouse your time cursor back to the beginning of the animation and zoom in. Next, select the camera key creator, and the camera will cycle from the furthest out position, zoom in, and then begin the animation. Let's see how this all looks. There's our flash, movement, and it's hard to tell, but those screws are actually rotating. Let's try another animation. Let's give ourselves about a half-second delay between the two. And again, select these components, either Control-click or User Selection Set. And now select Motion, Remove. We're not going to do a flash here. Instead, we'll just say from 0 to 2 seconds, translate in the y-axis. You can also pick your axis if it's not an orthogonal one. And from 2 to 3 seconds, change your opacity to 0. Click Create a Key. And now, the screws will rotate and unmove, translate up, and then begin to fade away. Great. To sum up this animation, we're going to zoom out. Again, capture our key, camera key that is. And we'll go ahead and select the entire disk and all the components on it by simply clicking the disk and hitting the left arrow key twice. Notice it selects the fillet first, followed by the base component, followed by the total subassembly. Let's try that one more time so you can see it. With those components selected, let's create our location keys. Next, we'll mouse to the right, give it about 3 seconds or so, and then choose to translate this in the vertical direction. Re-establish your key. And lastly, we'll explode this. We'll kind of pan down, create a new camera key, and then choose a linear explode for the remaining components. To make sure we got this just right, let's go make sure our camera key is set in the correct position. Now we can play this entire video back, illustrating the whole process. A really neat tip, if you want to have a dynamic video, or you're trying to see what happens to the entire model as it's playing, if you toggle off camera play mode and you play the video, this allows you to rotate the model as your components are moving, which is pretty cool. Well, this sums it up for SOLIDWORKS Composer. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you enjoyed it. This is Adam Hughes with GoEngineer. Thanks for watching.